Okay, well, welcome everyone to this meeting of the virtual IMS user group. Thank you for joining us. I'm Trevor Eddles. I'm CEO of iTechEd Limited. We're a mainframe consultancy, analysis and technical authoring organisation. And we're the people responsible for the content on the virtual IMS website, and we produce the newsletters. And we also look after the virtual CICS user group. So if you've got any colleagues that look after kicks, then tell them about that because they might like to join. So first of all then, as usual, let me run through the agenda for this meeting. Most of it will be taken up with a presentation, and today our guest presenter is James Martin. He's Senior Solutions Advisor for Rocket Software, and his talk is called What's New in IMS Connect Extensions version 3.1. And a copy of the slides from this presentation will be on the website later today. And by the way, if you've missed any of our previous meetings, you can download copies of the presentations from our website, and you can listen again to them. There's a link on our resources page. And if you're unsure where our website is, it's at fundy.com/virtual IMS. That's all one word. Following James' presentation and any questions you have for him, we'll move on to the latest IMS news and latest IMS related articles. Feedback request is there to remind me to ask you for your feedback about this virtual meeting. Then I'll give you the dates and times for the next couple of meetings. So that's the plan for this meeting. I'm anticipating that it will last for about 45 minutes, something like that. So, as I just said, today's presentation is from James Martin. James is a Senior Solutions Advisor for Rocket Software and an IBM Preferred Development Business Partner. He's been working with the IBM IMS performance tools for 13 years. His work history includes 3 years with IBM working as a client technical professional in the IMS tool space, and 10 years at Fundy Software working in a technical sales, support and software testing role. In his current role as a Senior Solutions Advisor, James travels to various conferences and customers in North America, South America, Europe, Asia and Australia for speaking engagements and product technical support. And James is also one of the IMS project managers for the Share Technical Conference. So, James, I'd like to thank you very much for being with us today. And what I'd like to do now is pass control of the meeting over to you. So let me do that now. Okay, so you should be presenter now, James. Okay, I can't hear you.
Yep, I'm here, Trevor.
All right, got you. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, Trevor. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to welcome everybody to this virtual IMS users group meeting. Today, our subject is going to be what's new in IMS Connect Extensions version 3.1. And as Trevor said, I'm James Martin with Rocket Software. So we won't waste a lot of time. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was welcome. This is a quick slide about the new feature summary in IMS Connect Extensions version 3.1. We will go into most of these features in more details in the following slides. I'm going to try to keep it brief, and I'd like to focus on some of the most interesting items, particularly this list. You can see the IMS Connect Extension Speed, which is an analytics feed that we'll get into later in the presentation, where we can actually feed information to off-host analytics engines. And I'll demonstrate some of the features and functionalities that you'll be able to see in all of these aspects of the product. This is a summary of the IMS Connect Extensions for DOS tool and how it fits in with some of the other tools that we have on offer here. If you take a look at this diagram, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but I did want to point out some of the newer things that have been added. And one thing I'd like to point out down here at the bottom is the IMS Connect Extensions Speed, the feed for analytics platform. This feed is actually using the Publisher API, which is the same API that feeds OmegaMon for IMS. And you can actually get near real-time data and feed it to off-host analytics platforms. And we'll get into that a little later in the presentation. I also wanted to point out the fact that of the integration capabilities of Connect Extensions with some of the other performance tools that you guys are familiar with, like IMS Performance Analyzer, Problem Investigator, and Transaction Analysis Workbench. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the presentation as well. So first, let's talk about the Operations Console, or the Eclipse platform that's offered with IMS Connect Extensions. In previous versions, that's always been received as part of the product, but now we've actually given you the capabilities to directly download the Operations Console from IBM. It's only available now via the ZOS Explorer Aqua website, and Aqua really greatly simplifies the installation and updating of the console. It provides a one-stop shop for downloading both the ZOS Explorer framework and the Connect Extensions plugin, along with a variety of Eclipse-based tools that could be very useful to you in your systems administration or your application development role, either one. You can see down at the bottom that there are some links to the Developer Works and IBM Knowledge Center there, where you can get some more information about how you can actually download this console directly and keep it up to date. And that's the biggest feature here. Now we're going to do a quick demo of the Operations Console here. You can see within the console, we can see a lot of useful information about our IMS systems in the status monitor, where we can get information about our IMS Connect, port activity, data store activity, and what I'm going to do here really quickly is show you a feature within the product that's called a data store drain. And if we do a route drain on this particular data store, you can see that the routing status will now be changed from normal to suspended. And we have a waiting reply, message reply count of 4. We're going to refresh it, and that waiting reply would go down to 0. And now you will see that that waiting reply has now switched to this fallback data store, and you can see that the accepted count is now going to go down. When you might ask yourself why you would do something like this. Well, if we wanted to take a particular IMS system offline for maintenance or something like that, the ability to drain a data store gives us the capability to not lose any of those outstanding messages that are coming back, waiting for reply, and we can safely suspend the routing status of that data store and then bring it back online after we've performed our IMS maintenance. Again, lots of great information in the Operations Console for IMS Connect Extensions. You can see some of the other information you can get here. And this is just really scratching the surface of the capabilities of the Operations Console, but I wanted to show you a quick little demo video, give you an idea of what it looks like, and encourage all of you to actually go out and give something like this a try, especially for the folks that aren't familiar with the Operations Console. I thought this might be pretty helpful to see some of the operational capabilities that are actually contained within the Operations Console. Now we're going to move on to some journal and socket usage information that has been added to the latest version of Connect Extensions. Now, this is some information that you can get in either ISPF or the Operations Console for IMS Connect Extensions. And I just wanted to focus here on the ability to see percentage values of your active journals and percentage value of your max stock value that you actually set in your HWS config file. And here we can see on the left in the ISP operations dialog the actual amount or percentage of the journal that's being used or that has been used, and this percentage of the socket value, and that's the percentage of max sock that you set in your HWS config file. And you might say to yourself, why is that information useful to me? Again, over here on the right, here it is in the Operations Console. Well, that information would be useful to you as a user if you were getting close or nearing the threshold of that max sock. You might be able to do something prior to running out of sockets and causing yourself some real issues in IMS Connect. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the Rex command interface or the Rex client interface options that are in the product as well. And why do we talk about things like journal percentages and things like that? And why would we offer Rex samples that would give you the ability to do things like switch journals and things like that? Well, we do have this actual case with a customer request out there. I'm not going to say who the customer is, but this particular customer wanted to run an automatic journal switch every night at midnight. But he didn't want to perform the switch if a switch had just recently occurred or if a switch was about to occur because the journal was getting full. And you might recall that the ISPF and ZOS Explorer or the Operations Console provide a single view where that information can be seen. But in addition to that, we've actually added a Rex client for automation that would give you the ability to actually see when this threshold is and automatically decide if a journal switch would be required or not. Now, this is the max stock value that we also talked about on the previous slide as well. And who would need something like this? Who would need a Rex sample that would be able to put some automated things around max stock values or percentage of max stock values? Well, the people who would need this would need something that would help them improve the understanding of socket use across their system and be able to respond earlier when socket usage rises above expected levels. Again, the ISPS dialog and the Operations Console provides that single view across the entire enterprise where all of this information can be seen. But in this case, we've just added this Rex sample that detects high socket use. And it automatically identifies sessions that are experiencing long wait times. And optionally, this Rex could be made to cancel these sessions that are having long wait times and causing issues and causing our socket usage to go up. Here are some other areas in IMS Connect Extensions where we provide Rex samples to help you with automation. And you can see on this list there's a wide variety of Rex samples out there that can help you automate things in your ZOS environment. It's probably important to point out that these Rex automation samples are very work out of the box. They are ready to go, but you can also add other ZOS operations to things like Rex. Rex is a scripting language, and what makes it so great is that it's not limited to just IMS Connect Extensions and the ability to manage things within IMS Connect Extensions. We could add ZOS operations or ISPS operations to that automation as well and do things like that. All of the existing Rex examples that you see here have been improved with a simplified command security. There have also been improvements as to how they're operating instructions and how they're documented in the user's guide. And we're going to get to some major changes in the doc coming up later in the presentation. Other new samples You can see include the percentage of journal and max thought conditions, drain, data store drain, like the example I showed you at the beginning. You could automate that, and you could even automate it to the point where you automated the draining of the data store and the shutdown of the system. Again, just a variety of ways that we can help you automate things that you do every day that are, I guess we might call them grunt work, things like that. These new Rex host commands allow us to produce some of the Rex samples that I've just mentioned in the previous slides. We've mentioned the journal and the sockets a bunch of times, and now you can also query the status monitor view that you saw there in the Operations Console at the beginning of the presentation, and get the statuses and statistics for various IMS Connect objects. Things like information on TCP/IP ports, IMS aliases in ODBM environments, and even remote connection system statistics, things like that. Again, down here at the bottom, and as you've seen these on every one of the slides, these links to the Knowledge Center, all of this has been really enriched in the documentation. Now let's stop for a minute and talk about security and the IP address rules features that have been added to the product. In today's world, security is more important than ever with all of the breaches that you read about every day, whether Facebook is being breached or whatever the case may be. There are breaches that we read about every day. That's paramount importance, and especially in the mainframe world. So one of the new features has been added to this latest version of IMS Connect Extensions is the ability to manage the trust base on an IP address. We have trusted application servers that our IMS Connect address spaces work with every day. Those trusted application servers come in via TCP/IP addresses, and they do work in IMS. And the problem becomes is how do we know if we can trust them or not? In this particular use case, as you might have seen by the animation that went by just a minute, we have a trusted application server here with this particular IP address, 192.17.10.50, that comes in and sets what's called the OTMA trusted user flag. This trusted user flag tells IMS Connect that this is a trusted application, okay? Comes in via this particular IP address. But what happens in the case where a hacker or someone intercepts a packet and says, okay, well, you know what, I can mimic what that trusted application server is doing. And I can tell IMS Connect, well, you can trust me just like you trusted the very first application server. And that trusted application server comes in on a specific IP address, but this other application server comes in on a different IP address. Well, in IMS Connect Extensions, we can now help you manage things like that with our IP address rules feature. And in this particular case, you see there are two rules that we've set up in IMS Connect Extensions. The default rule is to not trust anyone, which is a good suggestion in today's world. And when that application server sends in a workload via an IP address, we can actually set those rules to either trusted or not trusted. And in this case, we know that our trusted application server always comes in on this particular IP address. So when it comes in and sets the OTMA trusted user flag, we skip the actual password check feature, it goes right into validation and into IMS to do its work. But we also have these other two application servers that are coming in claiming that they can be trusted. And these application servers manage user flag. But since we have the rule in place that says only this IP address is trusted, when they come in, we realize, and Connect Extensions recognizes that they're not coming in from the trusted IP address and sends them to the default rule, which is not trusted. They then have to go through a password check and then into validation to do their work in IMS. Just a nice feature to help us manage in a very hack-friendly world today. Another feature that's been added is the ability to actually take the user ID from a client's digital certificate or their ATTLS certificate. In this case, we have the IP address rule of the default rule, which is nobody is trusted, but the application server now actually sends in a packet, and we have the ability to set a tick box in our rule that says that the client can actually send in their user ID information via ATTLS client certificate. And if that is the case, you see our rule now goes into this particular checking and say, do we have a user ID listed at the ATTLS port? If it's yes, well, we set the OTMA trusted user ID flag and validation, and then we go into IMS to do our work. If we do not receive that user ID, then it goes into the typical password check validation process, and then it's either rejected or accepted and gets to go and do its work in IMS. Again, just another neat little feature that's been added around the security in IMS Connect Extensions, which is so paramount today. Now we're going to talk a little bit about implementing OTMA and ODBM routing rule-based routing and workload balancing. And what this section really is just to give you guys an idea of the improvement in the documentation that has been made around the IMS Connect Extension product. And you can see that within, this is an example of the Knowledge Center. Again, the link is at the bottom for you to go to anytime and go and look at this. And as a matter of fact, I very much encourage you guys to go see the improvements that have been made in the doc, because it can really help you if you have questions about how to set up rules-based routing or any type of routing or workload balancing that you might want to do using the IMS Connect Extension product. You can see this example that comes directly out of the updated documentation are two examples of the way that we, or two very popular examples, I should say, of the way that we route workloads, or OTMA workloads in IMS Connect Extension. If you see here over on the left, we have the primary and fallback IMS data store routing setup. And here we have the typical IRM desk ID that comes in, and it comes into the routing rule. Is the target available? Yes, it is. Then it's going to be routed to this data store and do its work on this IMS. If this is not available, then it will go to this fallback set of data store. Again, a very example. One that we have done on the right-hand side is that to route to any IMS data store in a predefined list. IRM desk ID comes in, selects from a target list of data stores, and does its work on this set of IMS systems over here. Very straightforward, two of our most popular routing setups, and just either one is a good way to have fallback and reduce the chances of things like data store bottlenecks. Again, this is all documented in the Knowledge Center now, and you guys can get some really good information from there. One of the other updates in the documentation is the way that we can help you in IMS Connect Extensions to do things like OTMA workload shaping. And by workload shaping, we all know that in today's IMS world, we need to have some type of workload balancing, and customers do this all kinds of different ways. In this particular example that, again, is in the user documentation, we have an incoming OTMA workload, and we want to set capacity weight ratings that allow us to do more work on one IMS system than we do on another IMS system. In this case, we're doing more work on our IMS P2 than we are on our IMS P1, and Connect Extensions allow you to set and adjust these capacity weight ratings. You can even do this with some of the rec sample clients that I showed you earlier in the presentation, and balance your workload across your IMS system in any way that you choose as a user. And we talked about the routing scenarios and the capacity balancing for OTMA workloads. Well, some of you guys out there might be saying, well, what about Open Database? What about ODBM or DRDA protocols? What about that? Can we route those as well? Well, the answer is yes. And again, updated in the documentation are some of the more popular ways that we have seen customers set up routing for Open Database workloads. This is that multiple data store that gives you the alias that comes in. That's the biggest difference. Well, one of the biggest differences in ODBM workloads is instead of coming in with IRM information, they come in as an alias. But here we select from a target list of data stores, and we route to these IMS systems. We have the primary fallback over here on the right, and we have the ability to actually manage and balance workloads using capacity weight ratings. As this example shows here, we're giving more capacity to these two ODBMs and less capacity to this. So all of the things I showed you for OTMA basically are also available for Open Database workloads in IMS Connect. Now to get to the really exciting part, at least the exciting part for me about the new feature, the IMS Connect Extension Speed for Operations Analytics. Well, what is it? Well, it's a near real-time feed. Now, of course, we're never going to get real-time. It's very near real-time feed. It uses that Connect Extensions Publisher API, as I said before. You can see here, the most important thing to realize is that IMS Connect Extensions via the Publisher API is now actually building what we're calling an IMS Connect Transaction Index Record. And some of you may be familiar with that. Some of you may not. So you might be saying, what is a Connect Transaction Index Record? Well, in a lot of other subsystems, they have single records that contain all of the performance metrics of a transaction. Well, IMS and IMS Connect don't really have one of those. We get our performance information in IMS from a multitude of log records and or journal records in IMS Connect Extensions. And what we've done here is we've actually taken all of the performance metrics for a Connect transaction and put them into one consolidated record. And that's what's pushed out by the Publisher API into the feed. You can see there are several options for you to do it, but the one we're going to focus on today is the JSON lines format over TCP/IP and pushing that information out to analytics platforms such as Splunk, things like that. We're going to focus on Splunk today because that's what we've done. And, well, what can you do it with Splunk? And there's some information here about the Splunk base that we'll get to later in the presentation as well. So this is an example dashboard of one of the dashboards that you can actually use in Splunk. And you can see here, I'm moving my pointer around within here. I'm looking at certain peaks and different things. And I want to point out a couple of things here, okay? Up over here on the left, you can see that I've actually set this dashboard up and I have time range and identifier information. And in this particular information, in this particular instance, I have selected the IMS data store or the target data store. When it comes in, then each one has an original data store, and then we go to a target using our routing rules. And you can see that I can change this identifier to just about anything, and that would change the information that I actually see on the screen here. I could change it to client ID, user ID, IP address. I could look at many different variations of data on this screen. But for this particular instance, I just chose the target data store. And the first thing that we looked at over here, you can see that we are looking at by IMS target data store, the average transactions per second. Over here on the right, you can see that by data store, we have transaction counts and percentage usage values. Again, here's a pie chart. You remember that these dashboards are extremely customizable by you, the user. And those of you that use Splunk are very aware of that. And then when we came down here, you can see we have transaction counts on the left, And we were looking at different peaks and as running along during the transaction workloads for the day. And across the top here, you can see here's my target data stores, and I have different lines for different data stores. And you see that we're running across here, and I could drill down into any one of these peaks and get more information. But the significance of this particular slide is you can see we have a pretty high peak here, and then we have a really significant drop off to this flat line at 6:08 a.m. Now, what's actually happened here, if you go back to the very beginning of the presentation, when I did that example in my operations console, when I did that data store drain and we suspended routing to that particular data store, well, that's actually the visualization that you're seeing here. So the correlation with the actions that you're taking in the operations console, in the ISPS panels, can actually be correlated to these Splunk screens, and we can actually see the results of the operation that we've executed. And you can see that we have the data store drain here. Maybe the IMS system was offline for maintenance until 6:11, whatever the case may be. The IMS system came back up. We resumed or restarted the data store, and here we go back processing as normal. But very neat to see how one actual operation that we perform in one area of Connect Extensions, how we can actually see the result in another. This is a really interesting slide because, again, the identifiers, which we can change at any time, in this particular instance, we have actually used the identifier of IP address and IMS Connect systems, target data stores, and team members. Now, over here on the right, it's our identifier, which is the IP address. And it's important to remember that we could change that. Okay, but some of the other things over here on the right, like team member, we can't change that information. But what this is really a visualization of, as a user, if I've set up things like routing or capacity weight ratings or things like that in Connect Extensions, I can actually get a visualization in Splunk to see if I have done things the way that I wanted to do them, or if my workload is being distributed. And you can see that by these various IP addresses that are listed over here on the left, I have more work going to certain IMS Connect systems than I do to others. But I can also see that once that work is going in to an IMS Connect system, it is actually being distributed fairly evenly into the target data store environment. And I'm just going to focus on this one. Here we have a lot of work going into Icon 1 and not as much going here. But you can actually see how we've distributed that workload to these team members or these IMS systems on the back end. And we can follow the path of each one of these and see and make sure that our routing rules and our capacity weight ratings are set up properly and set up to what we as the users have determined that we need. Another different visualization. Again, you can see up at the top, I have time ranges in the first identifier and the second identifier. In this case, I've selected IMS Data Store original desk and target data store. But it's important for me to point out once again that in these Splunk interfaces that I can change these identifiers to anything that I want. IP address, user ID, client ID, all types of information that I can get, and it will change my visualization within this particular instance. I'm only going to focus really on one of the workloads, but you can see that as my workload in this IMOB right over here is the actual mobile workload for my particular installation. And I can see that as it comes in and to the original data store, that where it's actually being targeted to on the back end. And you can see that it's really been evenly distributed down here to the right, but I probably have a heavier distribution here. But probably one of the neater things to me about this visualization is if I actually go down to the iWeb, which is the web workload, I can actually, again, see that data store drain in action that I actually performed in the operations console. You can see that here for most of my workload that was going to this particular set of target data stores. But here for just a short period of time, I have these thin strands that are going, well, that's my primary fallback model that I actually showed earlier in the presentation. So that actually gives me a visualization that my primary and fallback setup is actually working as I expect it to, or as I set it up to do. Again, being able to correlate operations that I've performed in Connect extensions and actually seeing those visualizations in Splunk, to me, is just huge. Again, I have transaction rates and original data store information. I could see different visualizations. If I drill down into any of these peaks and valleys, I can see more information about any of that. The cool thing about these analytics platforms is the ability to be able to drill down and get a lot more information. Now, these next two slides are going to actually be the same visualization within Splunk. And you can see here again, up at the top, I have identifiers, which I can change to anything that I want to. And I have transaction rates for my IMS target data store information. I have a transaction elapsed time components here that I can actually look at in these particular areas. And I can look at a lot of different information here. I could, look at things like response time, OTMA elapsed time, output elapsed time, and things of that nature. Again, a lot of information in one place. The key message to take away from here, again, is the fact that I can change my identifiers to change my view, whether it's user ID, IP address, client ID, whatever the case may be, to get more information. And if I actually scroll down or drill down into one of these peaks or valleys, I might get some information that looks something like this. Okay, it would actually allow me to look at these particular instances and drill down. And you might say to yourself, well, why would that be helpful to me? Well, think about it kind of like this. If I was to look at one of these peaks or valleys and to get some information about some performance issues that I've gotten a call from the help desk. They've called in and they said, wow, we've got this transaction that's really showing poor performance. I mean, we've got almost an 8-second wait time on one particular transaction, and we need some help. Well, I might come to a place like this using the Connect transaction feed and go and look and find that particular instance in one of these peaks and valleys where I actually saw that rise or that peak or that valley that they were talking about. And I would know what time frame I was looking at in this particular instance. Let's take this OTMA ACK elapsed time. You can see we're running along here pretty smooth, and then we get a pretty high spike. Well, if I was to actually drill down into one of these peaks, the information that I'm seeing down here about my IMS Connect transactions would change. Okay, and it would actually show me the transactions that might be causing me the issue. And in this case, I would drill down until I found that particular transaction that was causing me that 8-second delay. And that information would be shown to me here. And then that would give me some information that's very important. Log token, client ID, what connects system, IP address, port. Again, all of that stuff is great information. But what's most important to me would be the log token or the client ID. Well, why is that? Because once I identified that particular transaction, I could then go into some of the other tools that I talked about earlier in the presentations, like the IMS Problem Investigators or the Transaction Analysis Workbench for System Z, and I could build a filter that would actually allow me to take the Connect Extensions Journal and the IMS log and merge them together, find that transaction, and actually see where the issue was and where that 8-second. Again, doing an operation in one platform, seeing the result in another platform, and then even going further and drilling down into another tool that allows me to actually solve the problem. This is just an example of how these dashboards can be very, very useful to you. Again, totally customizable. You can view all of this information that I have shown you here on the screen, but what happens if you really only care about response time? Well, guess what? You can build your dashboard to show you the information that you want and that you like. And that's the important message here. Here I'm going to talk really quickly about the IMS Connect Transaction Analysis Sample app. This is actually the Splunk base that I was talking about earlier. Here's the link for that Splunk base. You can actually go out and download this directly. I do want to point out really quickly that there's an embedded video in this particular end. It's this Analyzing IMS Connect OTMA Transactions video. Very, very helpful video, useful video. It's very, very in-depth about some of the concepts that we've been talking about today, where I've kind of brushed over the surface, but you can actually go out, download this, and actually use this to set up the feed in your own environment. Okay. Also, I want to point out this Docker container that has actually been created that is actually filled with sample data for you. If you saw anything in this presentation that was interesting you, especially around the analytics feed, this is something that you just have to do. This is a downloadable Docker container that you don't have to have a mainframe. You don't need anything. The sample data is actually provided for you. You can't do it on your work PC. You can always do it on your home PC if it's something that you would be interested in. You can play around. There's dashboards that are provided for you. You can play around with the dashboards if that's something that's of interest to you. Again, here is the link for that Docker container, and I really, really encourage you guys, if this is something that interests you in any way, to go out and play with this, because it's really, really, really a cool thing to play with. Here, from the developer work site, some recipes and information on how to set up the feed in your own environment. If that's something you're interested in, link Extensions Feed, and really, really give you some good ideas on how to set it up and get going with this in your environment. I think some of the key messages that I really want you guys to carry away today is that in today's world, our IMS Connect address spaces need a lot of customization. Depending upon what you're doing in your environment, and if you want to do anything other than just pass messages and requests back and forth, basically using it as a TCP/IP client, customization is something you're going to have to deal with. Okay, customizing Connect is possible but difficult due to some of the protocols and limitations that you might run into. And Connect Extensions is, in my opinion, one of the best out-of-the-box tools out there today to work in an IMS Connect environment. And if you are in an IMS Connect environment and you're not running Connect Extensions, you are really missing out on some of the things, the event capturing, the workload shaping, the added security, and now the analytics capabilities that are out there. Just something that, in my opinion, if you're a Connect Extensions customer, you really need to take a look at Connect Extensions. This last slide here is really here for you guys' information. Okay, this is something that I encourage you guys to do. If any of the things that you've seen out there today interest you, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there that are available to show you how to analyze these Connect OTMA transactions in Splunk, how to set up workload to fallback IMS systems, the Docker container information, the Splunk information, lifecycle information, working with some of these other performance tools. And if you're interested in taking Connect extensions for a test drive, we have demo systems that have workshops on them that you can actually do from your office, do from your home, whatever the case may be. We'd be happy to set you up with a test drive of Connect extensions if it's something that you'd be interested in. And with that, I'll say thank you, obrigado, danke, merci. I can't speak Japanese, so you guys are out of luck. But I really appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them or contact me. And thank you very much for your time today.
All right, thank you very much, James. We'll give people a minute or two if they've got any questions they want to type in that we can see. Can you give them your email address in case anyone comes up with a question later and they might want to contact you directly?
Absolutely. It's JAMES, James M, at rocketsoftware.com. It's on the front of the presentation that's got the foil.
Okay. All right. Brilliant. Yeah, I'll upload a copy of the slides a little bit later this evening, or this afternoon for those of you in different time zones. So yeah, you'll be able to get that from there. Otherwise, you can email me and I'll pass them straight on to James, and I'm sure I'll get straight back to you. Have you got any questions? Is there anyone? I'm just pausing for a second. Okay. In that case, what I will do, move on. If any questions come in, then I'll pause and I'll get James to answer them. But James, thank you very much. That was a really interesting presentation. And because we're a virtual user group, as usual, can you assume we're giving you a virtual round of applause now? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trevor. Appreciate the time.
Okay, right. I'm just going to make myself presenter and get back to my slides. Okay, yeah, brilliant. Yes, thanks, James. Moving on then, in terms of news, I see that Dynatrace has announced that it has extended Dynatrace, its AI-powered platform, to include IBM Z support for IMS, kicks, and middleware. This gives customers precise information about the performance of digital services across hybrid environments, from modern cloud applications to the mainframe. Yes, the implication there is that mainframes aren't modern, but we know better. Dynatrace provides software intelligence to simplify enterprise cloud complexity and accelerate digital transformation. It provides end-to-end visibility by automatically discovering and mapping every transaction with a single AI-powered solution. This real-time visibility from cloud to the mainframe gives enterprises a competitive advantage. They can eliminate inefficiencies and consequently innovate at a faster rate. And if you're interested in that, there's a link to the story on our website. When it comes to articles, there's just two. How to provision an IMS DBTM system with the IBM ZOS provisioning toolkit. That's by Eric Sue on the Z Systems Developer Community site. And how does IMS 15 stack up against IMS 14 and IMS 13? That's by Justin So, and also on the Z Systems Developer Community site. And they were both released during May. The links to the articles, they're also on our website, which I said earlier is at fundy.com/virtualims. So, feedback then. My email address is on the screen. If you're on our website, there's a Contact Us webpage, and you can contact me using that. So what have we got coming soon then? Well, 13th of August, we've got IMS APIs. You don't know what you don't know. And the presenter for that is Dusty Rivers. He's Director of Z Systems Software, IMS and Kicks at GT Software. And following that, on the 8th of October, we've got James Wilson, who's product developer at BMC Software. And I'll let you have the title of that session as soon as we have it. So, social media. Yes, you can keep up to date with what's happening in the world of IMS and in the virtual IMS user group by following us on Facebook and Twitter. And you can also join the virtual IMS group on LinkedIn. And the URLs are all on screen. They're all on our website. Remember to like us on Facebook. Everyone wants likes. And if you do tweet or Instagram or even Facebook these days, we do have a hashtag. It's hashtag virtualims. Okay, well, that's all for this meeting of the virtual IMS user group. Can I thank you all for attending? I must thank Rocket Software, the people who sponsor this user group. And of course, I particularly want to thank James Martin for today's presentation. Thank you, James. And that's it. Thank you all very much for joining the meeting. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the 13th of August. So thank you and goodbye.